Welcome to Dear Human Resources, the podcast where we explore the issues shaping work, careers, and leadership. I'm your host, Marilyn Germain. Today, we're talking about a topic that feels especially timely: AI and new job search. Today's graduates are not just competing with each other for jobs, they are also navigating AI powered hiring systems, AI generated resumes, and AI enhanced LinkedIn profiles. Visibility may be easier than ever, but trust is much harder to earn. My guest today is Vanessa Eric Hardy, award-winning lecturer at the UC Davis Graduate School of Management and creator of one of the nation's only full-credit MBA courses in personal branding. Vanessa works directly with students, navigating this new reality, and she argues that AI is transforming personal branding from a marketing tactic into a core leadership competency that universities must intentionally teach. She is also the author of the forthcoming book, Valuable and Visible: Redefining Personal Branding by Leading with Impact over Image. Vanessa, welcome to Dear Human Resources.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, a lot of job seekers are using artificial intelligence right now to write resumes, draft cover letters, and polish their online presence. So, let's start with the big picture, if you will. How is
Sure.
AI changing what it means to be truly ready for today's job market?
Sure. AI is such a convenient tool because it sure can speed up and make us all a little more efficient in what we do. But what we have to remember about AI is AI's job is to give you the right answer and please you. And so, what AI is always going to do when you use it to do something for you, the large language model algorithm is as such. It says, when do most people get satisfied and click away? And so, if you have 2.5 billion people querying AI every day and you ask it, right, optimize my resume for a product management job, it will optimize your resume in the same way that it thinks everyone else wants to see it. And you will be seen in the same way as everyone else. So the temptation to use AI to optimize for efficiency's sake is really strong. But then when we actually turn around and use it, it flattens us. I always tell students competence gets categorized, excellence gets categorized. But the good news is there's a way around that. And we can use AI to actually be distinctive. So it's not hopeless, and we can still use it to be efficient. We just have to use it as more of a thinking partner.
So that brings me to a question many job seekers are asking right now. When
Yeah.
everyone is using AI to punish resumes and cover letters, what actually helps someone stand out in a crowded applicant pool?
Yes. So using AI as a thinking tool is exactly what can help you stand out. So I always tell people that, you have this distinct advantage as a human because you have a human brain, not an algorithm. And so you can still think critically and pivot. And so I give my students something that I call the truth framework. First, I have them write one sentence for each of these five aspects. First, I have them write a sentence about the common trope or what everybody believes they need to have or be to be, whatever it is. Let's go with the example I just gave of product manager, right? What's the common trope or tropes that all those people need? Then the R is the real problem. What is the real problem we're missing? What do you know that you need that's a little bit different than what everyone else has? What do you do better? What do you do a little differently that's more efficient? And then the U is your understanding of a better approach. How do you apply that approach? And then tested reasoning is the next T. Write a sentence then about your results, right? I know this works because, and here's my examples. And then the H is how to act. How to act would be my goal is to apply this across systems here and there in various organizations because here's what I know it can do for your organization. So if you go through those five steps, all of a sudden now you're upstream of the algorithm. You're putting your own ideas into the algorithm. You're not asking it to give you the common information. You're asking it to help you with your information. And then you have a conversation with it. You question the question. You say, here are my distinct points of view. Here are the ways that I think I'm different. You paste those 5 sentences in and you say, can you optimize my resume in 2 ways? One, make sure I have the common tropes that I need to have. But two, make sure the distinction comes through in the examples that I've illustrated. And so then you have this machine, right, that isn't a critical thinker. It's a pleaser. And so the machine will go through this resume then on the employer end, and it will identify all those common tropes and say, okay, this person's qualified. But then it will see these extra things that you've optimized your resume for. And it'll say, you know what? I need to flag this. A human needs to look at it. This is above and beyond maybe what I thought it was. So, again, if we can question the question and use AI as a thinking partner to think critically, then by the time we prompt it, we're not stuck in that sea of sameness that oftentimes AI produces.
Yeah, I think it's about teaching students how to differentiate themselves from others through prompts. I mean, they need to be able to develop to create
Yes.
prompts, right? It's all about prompts, prompts, and um, making sure that they are kind of, part of their qualifications are highlighted, or as you said earlier,
Yeah.
making sure they stand out in some way. Yeah.
And I think there's kind of a fallacy out there that you look at these two people maybe that are same age, same experience, and one might be more distinctive than the other and may feel so interesting to listen to. And I think there's this fallacy out there that you're like born that way or you're not, or you're born a leader or you're not.
Mhm.
And I always push back on that because look what I just did with the truth framework, right? If you followed that sentence per sentence, it's tough to not be able to find something different. And you can even ask AI, like, give me 20 different ideas, like with this same framework that I could talk about. And chances are you'll find a way that you are different and that you are distinctive. And so I think not only just with the resume, but all along, you want to be thinking about those things, how you can speak, how you can show up, how you can even make these posts on LinkedIn that do give those distinctive points of view. Because as you mentioned in the introduction here, it's like a requirement now, or
Yeah.
else you really are. I always tell students, you're being forgotten and it's not your fault. No one's
Mhm.
ever taught you how not to be forgotten, right? This AI thing is so new. And so really getting used to being distinctive every time you're going to say something in a networking situation, or every time you go to make a post, think, what would everybody say? And how do I say it differently? How do I think about it differently? You know?
So let's talk about what happens before a human being even sees an application. Can you walk us through how AI is really being used to screen resumes and what candidates should do if they want to make it through those filters without sounding, robotic?
Yeah. So that's where what I said about making sure you do have those common tropes in there because you want to make it through all those filters, right? So you want to make sure that you're looking at the patterns. So LLMs patterns mean quite a bit in addition to keywords, but patterns are like the most important. That's what AI is trying to find and compress. And so those words and phrases that are in the job description, you need to write your own experience with those. So you want to make sure that you fulfill everything they're asking for in the language that they want. And that's where AI is a great time saver. And then if you fulfill all those things, you make it through, right? You're competent. And so then all of a sudden, how do you look different on the resume than all the other competent people? That's where some of these different points of view comes in. So it's kind of like this art and science, if you will, of looking at this pattern language of, optimizes quality control in the following ways. You write about that, but then you say used, whatever you call your approach to quality control for A, B, and C outcome, right? So you have that second line that then elevates your distinction beyond what the job description is asking for. So you can really use that job description as a guide, both in fulfilling what it is looking for, and then for everything it's looking for, adding a little something that's about your different approach.
So, This reminds me that, this goes beyond resumes. We are now in a moment where almost anyone can generate polished content very quickly, whether it's a LinkedIn post or a professional bio or even, you know, thought leadership, if you will. So I want to end on a broader question for you, Vanessa. In a world where everyone can generate polished content with AI, how can someone build a personal brand that still feels, authentic and credible and you know what, human?
Yeah. So you're such a good question, right? We're creating humans. And we're in a time where everybody has kind of made themselves visible online by posting more content. And now everyone can do that with the efficiency of AI. And everybody's forgettable, like we just said. And so I always encourage students to, first of all, look at personal branding in a different way. Personal branding actually is not about you at all. And we've mucked it up somehow with the definition of influencers, like it's become all murky that, these are people that professionally trade time for money. And we've associated that with personal branding. And that's actually a full-time job that's monetized. But the brand in and of itself is to delight customers. I mean, brands exist to form relationships with customers. So when people are scrolling online, they're looking for something to make their lives better. So what do you know that you can actually teach people? How can you show people a different way? You can use the truth framework for this too, because my goal for students is maybe you don't have to get to the point where your resume is stacked in, a pile of 1,000. Now, if you show up and you're always updating people on awards and qualifications and things you're working on, then yeah, you get lost. You sound like everyone else. You have to apply for things. But if you're actually giving that distinct point of view and teaching people something valuable, then they try it. They trust you because it works. Then they remember you. And when they remember you, they refer you. And so that kind of memorability is what scales. We always say we drive growth in marketing. We actually drive memorability. The memorability is what scales the growth. And so again, you have to become memorable based on what your audience wants. So if you want to become a sales manager, for example, teach your peer salespeople how to close the deal softer and more effectively. All of a sudden, that person that's going to hire you might notice you. I have a person, a case study in my upcoming book who wanted to be a communications director for public lands, national parks, etc. So he started talking about that. And now he has his dream job and he was recruited to that. Same with an optometrist who came through my class getting her MBA and said she wants to do more speaking. She wants to kind of have a mix of seeing patients and speak. And she started saying that dry eye, we think we've solved it with eye drops, but it's not. We're only treating the symptoms. Here's how I look at dry eye. I also use it as an indicator of underlying conditions. Talk to the primary care physician. I would never treat an autoimmune disorder with eye drops, yet we do all the time. And wow, isn't that distinctive? And now she makes 50% of her income with speaking engagements for the industry. And I say all that because they didn't wait to apply to something, they positioned themselves. And I think that's the key in 2026 in this, sea of so much information and noise. And so in addition, I always tell my students, I give them a formula to post once a week on thought leadership. And so once a week, they want to be teaching someone something with a framework. And they can tease out those ideas with the truth framework. And then they want to create like 3 steps to doing something better. Bonus points if you lead in with a story, we're connected to stories, and even more bonus points if you turn your face to the camera and say, today I want to teach you about this, and post that with your thought leadership post, because we're craving humans and authenticity. In fact, I have research in my book that shows that videos that are somewhat flawed or mistakes that are apparent actually convert better these days. That's the authenticity, number one. Number two, once students get used to that, I ask them to create a website for themselves. So often we spend more time online than we do in person every single day. Yet we ignore the fact that that's where we're living most of our lives. We think about where we're going to show up, what we need to do, who we need to talk to each week in person. We don't do that online. And so we also don't own our identity online. If you stole my identity in person right now, I'd be like, sorry, I have to go. I'm going to call the police. Online, we don't even take care of it. Most people don't even own their own URL. So I tell my students, buy your own URL. and start taking those thought leadership posts and put them on an active blog on your website. Put down a homepage with a little bit about you. All of a sudden, you look different than the vast majority of people on the internet. I mean, only 1% of people actually post on LinkedIn. So again, there's such opportunity to stand out before the moment of that job or opportunity even comes. And then there's all those secondary things like consulting opportunities, things like that as you get more senior in your career, but you have to be visible to get those. So if you lead with value, all of a sudden people are remembering you and referring you. And you don't have to worry about self promotion because they're naturally finding who you are. They're making sure that you are who you say you are naturally. They're checking on your credentials, et cetera. And that's right there in your social bios. So that's really what I tell students to do, and I have kind of four parts that I break it into in this class to really help them first come up with a brand idea, then package it, then disseminate it through social media to drive people back to that owned website online. And then finally, if they want to monetize, if they want those speaking engagements, things like that, that's the last part.
Do you find that students, you've been in higher ed for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years?
Yeah, I've been in higher ed for 5 years and I've done corporate training for 10 years.
Okay. Do you find that students have a hard time self-promoting?
I find that we all do. No one actually likes it except for maybe a few of those influencers I spoke about.
Mm.
And so the cool thing about this is you don't have to. I
Yeah.
mean, we all need to be doing this, so why not take some of those barriers away?
Yeah. It's a fascinating discussion, really. Can you say a few things about your book? And when is it coming out? What's the how how many pages is it? What does it talk about?
Sure. So thank you so much for that. My book is again called Valuable Invisible. It's coming out May 5th. And actually, a few of my students asked me to write it. And at first I was like, oh gosh, that sounds way too, I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to have to sell it and all the self promotion, right? Like I did the thing that I tell my students, just step out, right? So I decided, okay, I'm going to step out because they said, I think more people need this. And um, my hope, my why for the book is I do hope that people find their voices because the people in your audience, they know so many amazing things and they're holding back because they're afraid. They see what they think personal branding is and they don't realize there's another way. And I happen to believe that the internet belongs to all of us. And wouldn't it be cool if we all kind of tried to use value to drive that visibility? I mean, the internet would be a lot better of a place, right? And so my book basically takes what I teach my students in class, those four parts I told you about. Each chapter has a case study to illustrate the lesson of a real student or client. So we're not talking about these celebrities that I'm drawing examples from. We're talking about real success stories based on the real things I teach in the book because I want people to be inspired. And I also want people to do this in under 2 hours a week. So at the end of each chapter, I have time estimates for people as they're learning how to do this so that they can feel really confident about their ability to continue it. So again, like my dream for the book is just that more people that deserve to have their voices out there have it out there. I think in the end of the day, we're all imposters. I mean, look at how I reacted, how I just told you I reacted when they said, you need to turn this into a book, right? And so I think it's important for us to remember that it's not so much that someone is like has more than you or deserves more than you. It's just that they said, okay, I'm going to swallow hard and step out. And that's what I want for people because, gosh, so many talented people come in and out of my classroom. And I want them to have those opportunities. And the world has changed. It's not so much about, again, that competence or even excellence, right?
Well, Vanessa, thank you for joining us today for helping us think more clearly about how AI is changing the job search and what it still means to show up with substance, credibility, and real value, as you said in this recording. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.